My name is Carolyn Brooks. I'm 57 years old, and I live just outside Knoxville, Tennessee. 3 years ago, my younger brother looked me straight in the eye during our mother's funeral reception and said something I'll never forget. "Don't worry, Carolyn. Mom wanted me to handle everything." At the time, I believed him. I had no idea those 7 words were about to cost me the home my father built with his own hands, and I definitely didn't know that one envelope hidden inside an old tackle box would change everything. I'll never forget the smell of coffee and biscuits drifting through my mother's kitchen that morning. The funeral wasn't until noon, but family had already started showing up. Aunts I hadn't seen in years, cousins pretending nothing had changed, neighbors carrying casseroles. Everybody spoke softly, like raising their voice might somehow wake my mother from the bedroom she would never walk into again. My brother, Daniel, moved through the house like he owned it. He hugged people, accepted condolences, answered questions. Every few minutes, someone would pat him on the shoulder and say, "You're taking good care of everything, son." He never corrected them. Funny thing is, for the last 8 years, I had been the one taking care of our parents. I drove Mom to chemotherapy. I handled Dad's medications before he passed. I paid utility bills whenever they fell behind. Not because anyone asked me to, because they were my parents. Daniel lived only 40 minutes away, but somehow 40 minutes always became an excuse. Work's crazy. Kids have soccer. Maybe next weekend. Next weekend rarely came. Still, I never kept score. Families aren't supposed to, or at least that's what I believed. After everyone finished eating, Daniel walked over carrying a thick manila folder. He smiled, the same easy smile he'd worn since high school whenever he wanted people to trust him. "Mom signed everything before she got sick," he said. "She wanted me to handle the estate so you wouldn't have to worry." I nodded. Honestly, that sounded like something Mom would do. She hated conflict. If she believed Daniel could keep the peace, she'd probably convince herself it was true. "I'll keep you updated," he added. "There's really nothing you need to do." Nothing. That word sat strangely in my stomach. Still, it was the day of my mother's funeral. I wasn't about to argue over paperwork, so I hugged him, told him to call if he needed help, and drove home believing our family had survived the hardest day we'd ever face. I couldn't have been more wrong. Life settled into a quieter rhythm, or at least I tried to convince myself it had. I went back to work at the elementary school library. Every Wednesday after work, I'd stop by Mom and Dad's old house, water the flowers, collect the mail, dust the furniture. The place still smelled like cedar and old photo albums. Sometimes I'd sit on the back porch with a glass of iced tea. It almost felt like Dad would walk outside any minute, asking if I'd seen his fishing hat. Those afternoons helped. Grief doesn't disappear, it just learns to sit beside you without saying much. Daniel rarely came by. Whenever I called, he'd say, "Busy week," or "I've got meetings." I figured estate paperwork took time. I didn't push. About 4 months later, my phone rang during lunch break. It was a man I didn't recognize. "Is this Carolyn Brooks?" "Yes." "This is Michael with Volunteer Realty. I wanted to schedule a walkthrough before listing the property." I frowned. I'm sorry. What property?" There was a pause. "Your parents' house." I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because I honestly thought he'd called the wrong number. "I think you've got the wrong family." Another pause. "Ma'am, according to county records, your brother authorized the sale process last week." Everything around me went quiet. Kids were laughing outside during recess. Teachers walked past carrying lunch trays. But I couldn't hear any of it anymore. Only one sentence. Authorized the sale. I drove straight to Daniel's office. Didn't call, didn't text, just drove. When his receptionist said he was in a meeting, I walked right past her. He looked surprised, not guilty, just surprised. Carolyn? What sale? His smile disappeared. We were going to talk. When? After everything was finalized. My hands were shaking. You're selling Mom's house? He leaned back in his chair. It's the practical thing to do. The practical thing? I've already spoken with an investor. My memories are in that house. Our parents' memories. He sighed like I was being unreasonable. You don't understand finances like I do. I'll make sure you get something. Something. I stared at my own brother, wondering when he'd started talking to me like a stranger, asking for charity instead of his sister. Then I asked the question that changed his look on his face. How much is the house worth? For the first time, he hesitated. And that's when I knew. He wasn't telling me everything. I kept my eyes on Daniel. He reached for a bottle of water, unscrewed the cap, took a sip, then set it down without drinking much. The market's good right now, he said. The investor offered $420,000. $420,000. My parents bought that house for $43,000 in 1981. Dad spent every summer adding something to it. The deck, the workshop, the stone walkway Mom loved. I sat down in the chair across from his desk because my knees suddenly didn't feel reliable. And you were going to tell me after you signed everything? Daniel rubbed his forehead. I was going to tell you when I had a plan. What plan? He looked at me carefully. To help you. That sentence landed like a slap. Help me? You're still renting. You don't have much saved. I figured I could put some money aside for you. I stared at him. Put some money aside for me from my half of our parents' house? His jaw tightened. It's not exactly half. The room seemed to tilt. What does that mean? Mom changed some things before she passed. What things? The trust. I stood up. Show me. Carolyn, show me. He opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of papers. I flipped through them, trying to make sense of legal language that suddenly felt like a foreign language. Then I found it. Primary beneficiary, Daniel Brooks. Secondary distribution, Carolyn Brooks. 10%. 10%? I read it 3 times. Mom would never do this. Daniel didn't answer. Tell me she would. He looked away. And that was answer enough. I drove straight to my parents' house. I sat in the driveway for nearly 20 minutes with the engine running. 10%. After everything. I kept thinking about Dad's last winter. The nights I slept on their couch because he was afraid to be alone. The mornings Mom couldn't get out of bed and I helped her dress. Daniel visited twice that entire month. Twice. I finally went inside and walked room to room. Nothing had changed. Dad's fishing mod still leaned in the corner. Mom's reading glasses were still on the end table. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. I walked out to Dad's workshop behind the garage. That little building had always been his kingdom. He fixed lawnmowers, built birdhouses, and pretended he was going to restore an old motorcycle that never actually ran. I sat on the stool by his workbench and let my hands rest on the worn wood. Then I noticed something odd. The bottom drawer was slightly open. Dad was obsessive about closing drawers. I pulled it open the rest of the way. Inside were old tools, a flashlight, and his green tackle box. The same tackle box he carried on every fishing trip since I was 12. Something about it made me pause. I opened it. Hooks, sinkers, a faded photograph of me and Dad holding a bass we caught at Norris Lake. And underneath all of that, a sealed envelope with my name on it. Carolyn. My hands started shaking before I even opened it. Dad's handwriting covered the front. Inside was a letter and a small USB drive. The letter was dated 6 months before he died. Carolyn, if you're reading this, something isn't right. Your mother loves both of you, but she worries too much about keeping peace. I don't. I know what you've done for us. I know who showed up and who didn't. I asked our attorney to prepare equal inheritance papers. If those papers aren't what you end up seeing, take the USB drive to him. Love, Dad. I read it twice. Then I looked at the USB drive. My father had known. Somehow, before he died, he had known something might happen. The next morning, I called the attorney whose name was written at the bottom of the letter. His receptionist scheduled me for that afternoon. When I arrived, he looked at the envelope, then at me, and his expression changed. I was wondering if you'd come in. My brother says Mom changed the trust. He nodded slowly. She did. Why? He folded his hands. Because your brother brought her a set of documents after your father passed. He told her they were routine updates. My stomach dropped. Routine updates? Your mother signed them. She trusted him. And the USB drive? The attorney took it, plugged it into his computer, and opened a folder. There was a video file. Dad appeared on the screen, sitting in that workshop, wearing the flannel shirt Mom always tried to throw away. He looked straight at the camera. If this video is being watched, I need the truth on record. My intention is for everything to be divided equally between my children, 50-50, no exceptions. The attorney paused the video. Your father recorded this after expressing concerns that someone might try to pressure her later. Can this stop the sale? He looked at me for a long moment. It might. Might? Because there's one more thing you need to know. He slid a document across the desk. The investor buying the house wasn't a stranger. It was a company owned by Daniel's business partner. And the sale price wasn't $420,000. The property had already been appraised for $680,000. My coffee went cold while I kept staring at that number. Then the attorney said the one sentence I never expected to hear. Your brother wasn't just cutting you out. He was planning to buy your parents' house through his partner and keep the profit for himself. That hit me like a freight train. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was a setup. I didn't say a word. I just stared at the attorney. My brother was buying the house himself? He nodded. Not directly, through an LLC registered under his business partner's name. Once the sale closed, ownership would quietly transfer back to them. I leaned back in my chair. The room suddenly felt too quiet. So the lower sale price would have left more equity hidden in the second transaction, he finished. Which means your brother would receive the property, your 10% would be based on the first sale price, and the remaining profit would stay with his company. I closed my eyes. This wasn't greed anymore. This was planning. Months of it. Maybe longer. The attorney slid another document across the desk. Your father anticipated something like this. That's why he recorded the video. Can we stop the closing? We can request an emergency injunction. Do it. 48 hours later, the closing was canceled. Daniel called me 12 times. I answered on the 13th. What the hell are you doing? He snapped. I'm protecting Dad's wishes. You have no idea what you've started. No? I looked out my kitchen window. I think I finally do. He hung up. 3 days later, we met in probate court. No shouting, no television drama. Just two families sitting on opposite sides of a courtroom. Daniel looked exhausted. His wife wouldn't even look at me. The judge reviewed the documents one by one. Original trust, revised trust, Dad's handwritten letter, the recorded video, medical records showing Mom had been recovering from surgery when she signed the revised paperwork. Then the attorney presented the LLC documents. The courtroom became very quiet. The judge adjusted his glasses. So the purchaser of this property is connected to the executor of the estate? Daniel swallowed. My business partner. Answer the question. Yes. And you failed to disclose that relationship? Daniel didn't have to. Everyone already knew. The hearing lasted nearly 4 hours. When it ended, the judge postponed the sale and ordered a full investigation into the estate. Outside the courthouse, reporters weren't waiting. Nobody applauded. Real life isn't like that. People simply walked back to their cars. Daniel caught up with me near the parking lot. I never wanted this. I stopped walking. You paved a path where you got the house, the money, and Mom believed she'd done the right thing. I was trying to protect the property. No. I looked him straight in the eyes. You were protecting yourself. For the first time in months, he didn't argue. 2 months later, the investigation ended. The findings were simple. Daniel had breached his fiduciary duty as executor. The revised trust was still under serious legal challenge. The attempted sale was ruled invalid. The estate would return to its original distribution until the court finalized a corrected settlement. Exactly what Dad had wanted. 50-50. When the paperwork was finally signed, I stood on the front porch of my parents' house one last time. The realtor asked softly, "Ready?" I smiled. Almost. I walked through every room. Dad's workshop, Mom's sewing room, the hallway where our height marks were still penciled onto the wall. Instead of selling immediately, I made a different decision. I bought Daniel's share. Using my inheritance and a small mortgage, I kept the house. Not because it was valuable, because it was home. 6 months passed. I restored the workshop. I planted Mom's favorite roses again. Every Sunday, my grandchildren came over to bake cookies in the same kitchen where Mom taught me. The house felt alive again. Daniel disappeared for a while. He resigned from his position at the family business. Several clients left after learning about the court case. His marriage struggled. People in town talked, not because I told them, because court records speak for themselves. One afternoon, he showed up unexpectedly. No expensive truck, no confident smile, just a tired man carrying an old tackle box. I found this in my garage. Inside was one of Dad's fishing reels. I think it belongs here. I nodded. He didn't come inside. I'm sorry, Carolyn. There was a long silence. Then he added, I spent so many years trying to prove I was successful, I forgot what success actually looked like. I believed he meant it, but forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. It simply lets you stop carrying them. I hope you build a better life, I told him. I really do. He nodded once. Then he walked back to his truck. That was the last time I saw him for nearly a year. Last spring, I was sitting on Dad's old porch swing watching the sunset when my granddaughter asked, Grandma, why didn't you sell this place? I smiled, because the answer had become so simple. Some things are worth more than money. She looked around the yard. The memories? I squeezed her little hand. The people who made them. She smiled, then ran off chasing fireflies across the same lawn where Daniel and I once played as children. Funny thing is, for years I thought my parents' greatest gift would be the inheritance. Turns out it wasn't the money, it wasn't the house. It was one letter hidden inside an old tackle box, a letter that reminded me that truth has a way of finding daylight even when someone tries their hardest to bury it. And every time I unlock Dad's workshop, I still hear his favorite words in my head. Do the right thing, Carolyn. The rest usually takes care of itself. I finally understand what he meant.